Okay, guys, we are back with Diego Kelazhur Schwimmer. We, at the last part of our first part, we talked the technical side of StarCraft 2. We talked about the situation in TVZ, where you gave us a bit of your thoughts regarding the gameplay, not necessarily the balance in general. A very interesting idea to further tweak the tactical situation to avoid the situation of having an army that is basically unbeatable for the other player. And I found that very interesting. Your insight on that. Um, I would like to go a bit further. We talked now the game itself. At this point in time, as a player, as a pro player, how do you see the bigger picture of StarCraft and the industry and the esports in general? Do you feel, the one thing that we kept talking the last couple of months is obviously the thing of, is the game dead or is it not dead, and is the industry growing or is it not growing? So how is it for you as a pro player at this point in time?
I feel like it's not decreasing, but it's not really increasing there either. It's just like kind of maintaining its niche community. I'm not sure how to say this word, but we've gotten to the point where like everyone that isn't really like a RTS fan isn't at StarCraft anymore. But we still have like everyone that really likes RTS, likes watching it, and we're gonna keep those people no matter what because there is no other strategy game. So until until there stops being tournaments or they release another game, another strategy game that's as good as StarCraft, and we're just gonna keep that same community that's been there and they're gonna stick with us. So we can only go up from here, I feel.
How do you see the system at this point in time? We have WCS. Okay, we have obviously the GSL for the Koreans, but there's not much more going on, I feel. Or how do you see it? Is that enough? Should we maybe create more? Or are you satisfied as a player with your possibilities?
I like the WCS system right now. I think it's well, at least the WCS tournaments, I think they're in a really good spot. Like and integrating them, the qualifiers for each region into like Copa America and stuff was a pretty good idea. China with GPL and stuff. Um, but and I'm not an expert on this as much as like the big tournament organized like ESL and DreamHack. But I feel like the WCS system kind of killed it for the other tournaments like IEM and the non-WCS DreamHacks, because it's hard to compete with the seasonal events. But then
Mm.
again, and I'm not an expert on it. I really like the WCS seasonal events that lead up to BlizzCon,
Mhm.
but I feel like the smaller tournaments like Challenger and the IEMs and stuff, like they need their own place in this as well. The
Mhm.
like the giving WCS points is good, but it needs like an open bracket or something that can let players travel to play in it, because like doing qualifier only for WCS points is kind of tricky because there's like server issues and
Mhm.
time zone issues and whatnot. Like for example, IEM Shanghai with the global qualifiers that were held on Korea server, which completely like took out all the European players, and they ended up awarding WCS points for that event. So like the Chinese players that had home advantage for by having two spots for that event, they ended up getting a lot of points for it. So I
Mhm.
think they need to work on the non-seasonal events. I think the seasonal events are really good, but they need to work on Challenger and non-seasonal events.
what would be something that you would really like to happen outside of WCS? I mean, you mentioned now some, but you personally, if you no restrictions, like money is not an issue, you could just wish for something.
I would like IMs and other dream hacks to feature StarCraft again, like more often, and maybe add open bracket to those, and continue doing like host qualifiers. I think you should always have like country players playing, in the IEMs and stuff. And maybe support the small tournaments more. Like you have DNA tournaments, for example, Philadelphia and Storm Cup. Like they really have no support for them. They're just doing it on their own. I think those could get a lot more exposure for what they do. Like you don't even have to give them money or just or provide them with anything. Just give them more exposure that like I feel Blizzard doesn't really give. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
nice.
Challenger as well. Same thing with Challenger. Like Challenger gets no exposure whatsoever, so they could work on that.
True, yeah. Yeah, maybe. Let's hope for the best. I mean, it seems to me that, at least as somebody that is only getting the news when they are already 2 weeks old, it's like, it seems to me that they are still tweaking and trying to improve some things. And I mean, at least until next year, they will have the WCS system. They will support Starcraft, so that's quite cool. Hopefully, we see some of the changes maybe that you mentioned. Something that I discovered when I was preparing for this interview with you is what I also discussed at one point with Maynard, the commentator from Australia, that there is a South American, Brazilian, but also other countries. So there is a South American scene of StarCraft, and but it's because of the language barrier. Obviously, it's quite, at least for me, it seems quite on its own. Would you agree to that? So is there a scene in South America that we should know of?
Not really. Besides Copa America, like Latin America doesn't really get a lot of love in StarCraft. They're very neglected, I would say, and also it doesn't help that the community is rather small. Like it's very hard to find RTS lovers in South America. So most of the people that like watch StarCraft, they only watch it because of me in Brazil, for example. So it's complicated, I guess, but they're definitely neglected, and I feel that besides having a small community, we could still get a lot more growth if only there would be more exposure for tournaments. Like, and I think Copa America is pretty good at gathering exposure from other places because their production is really good, and they're always putting their streams on Team Liquid and like announcing it and stuff. Like I think having a good production is number one thing to overcome language barriers and make people watch the tournaments.
So what would you say? Why is that? Why is StarCraft, or why are RTS games? Let's talk about Brazil. Why are they not so popular? What is it, cultural, or is it? Why did it never take off? Like, for example, in Europe or in the Eastern Europe countries, or in Russia also.
Well, there are many factors. The first one being is the money barrier. So free-to-play games are what's most famous in Brazil. It's always been like that. Like it's either free games or really cheap games like CS:GO that you can get for like $3 or $2 on Steam. Like those are always the most popular in Brazil because like a large part of the player base are like students and kids who really don't have any money to pay for games like Starcraft, where it costs like maybe 80 reais here, which is like the same as $80 for an American student. It's a lot of money. So there's that. There's also the fact that like the genre itself isn't very appealing to the audience. Like the country itself has a more casual approach to what games they like. They're really big on MOBAs and shooting games. It's just their thing more. And also, it seems that StarCraft has perpetuated this perception of the people that it's like a really hard game and that you need 300 APM to play a game of StarCraft. So they're like, the first reaction when you say, hey, like, why don't you try StarCraft, is be like, oh, I only have 10 fingers, like it's gonna be their first thing they say. Like, and they've perpetuated this thing that you need to be a 300 APM Korean to play StarCraft, which is really not true. There's so many modes and so many things that you can do. There's co-op, there's like the campaign, the arcade, and things that you can play for free, that, which brings me to the fourth criteria, is that there is actually no exposure in Brazil for this. Like, no one knows that you can download StarCraft for free and play the arcade, some missions of campaign, custom games, and co-op. Like, no one knows about that. And I feel like if they at least knew about co-op, that you could play co-op for free, then there will definitely be a lot more players trying it out, because it's really a fun mode. It's fun.
Yeah, sure. And so you are mentioning now several factors that have an impact on why StarCraft is maybe not that popular compared to other games. What would you say about the infrastructure, internet infrastructure, at this point in time?
Yeah, there's also the ping is not really an issue anymore, because they have Brazil servers in StarCraft 2 now, so that's really nice.
Okay, cool.
So if only you could increase the amount of players from Brazil, I feel like it will be really nice for matchmaking, where people can match with other people from Brazil more often and play on their own server with zero ping, because everyone enjoys playing with no ping a lot more than 100 plus. So if you could give that to them, then I'm sure they'll play a lot more and enjoy it more.
So I find that very interesting, because this country is so big. There are, like, at this point in time, I think 200 million people living in Brazil, and I mean that's a lot of people. And there could be at least, so I agree with you. I'm happy that you are mentioning these factors, because I myself was wondering, how is it that we only, at least for me as a foreigner to Brazil now, why is it that I only know one player from Brazil? This is so weird. There could be more, probably. Yeah, maybe. I mean, that's. I'm happy that there are at least some people passionate about it, like you and other people. I read that you picked it up also through your brother, right?
Indeed.
Yeah. And you went to, I think, to internet cafes to play it, or it was Brood War, I think, no? You started out with Brood War, and
Yeah, he introduced Brood War to me in a PC cafe, and we just enjoyed playing like 1v1s, and then later we got it at home, and we just played a lot of use map settings maps.
Okay.
So like sunken defense and things like that.
Yeah. So we were lucky that you got lucky to get to know StarCraft in a way.
Indeed.
Yeah. So
if it weren't for that, I would have never started playing StarCraft 2.
Yeah. So I mean, that's actually quite a. Hearing you describe the whole setup in Brazil, it's quite amazing to me that, you got to know this game, and that you then got to know StarCraft 2, and also stuck to that game. So but that's so fascinating for me. So what? So you are not the casual Brazilian gamer, obviously, because somehow StarCraft and StarCraft 2 triggered something in you, um, or somehow connected to you as a person. So what 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 was that? What do you think? What happened?
Mm. That's funny because the reason I first got into StarCraft was because of the lore. Like, I'm a really big lore nerd when it comes to games,
Okay.
and I really enjoyed like sci-fi setting games and stuff, so that's why I got into it so much. And after that, it was when I first found esports that made me love StarCraft so much. Like, uh, all the personalities and the community figures that I saw, like when I was just like an average player watching all these MLGs and stuff, and seeing all these cool guys, Huck, Stefano, Idra. Like, it was all so cool for me, and maybe because I fell in love with these StarCraft players is the reason that I got into StarCraft esports so much. And I couldn't go to any other game because I don't know any other players from the other game. I don't feel emotionally invested into any other game.
Okay. Okay. So there is an emotional investment, and there's something that somehow invoked your passion also and your motivation to keep playing StarCraft also. Yeah. So I mean, now you are already some years actively playing it, and so what still gets you passionate? Where do you get really excited when playing StarCraft?
Definitely tournaments. Like,
Yeah. Okay.
I'd say the practice time of StarCraft is probably the most boring part for a pro gamer. Like, people only see like what's there for them to see, like the streams and the tournaments, but they don't really know like the hours and hours of practice that players put behind into what they're seeing. So, but winning, like going to a tournament, flying across the world to go to a tournament and then win, see like all your hours of practice and labor bear fruit, I think there is no equal feeling. The satisfaction is too much.
Yeah, I can imagine, man. So you are mentioning now the hours that you put in. And yeah, I mean, you put in a whole life. You dedicated a couple of years now already from your life to a game, and to obviously to the competition into the game. So I think it would also be, if you lose the passion, or if you lose that competitive spirit, I think it doesn't make any sense to compete, obviously. So yeah. Um, I recently you had a small interview with Fear Dragon. I think it was at Austin, where you told him that you don't watch, or that you don't like to watch your own replays. Is it still like that? So you don't watch your own stuff?
Generally, I don't really enjoy reviewing my own games.
Even the tournament games, you don't watch that?
I mean, I watch the Korean tournaments, but mostly because I like for learning purposes.
Okay.
But I don't really watch foreign tournaments, and I don't really watch my own games. I like playing more than I like watching.
Why
Too
is
much.
that? Why is that?
Maybe it's just for my personality. Maybe I'm just too easily bored. Maybe watching is too boring for me, and I just want to like. I see someone playing, I'm like, okay, I want to be there. I want to play there. Like I want to play this guy and I want to beat him. Maybe that's just my mentality, my way of being.
And regarding your own replays, are you too critical with yourself, or do you get
Yeah,
angry?
that's also
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons I get too critical myself. Like, I get in the replay, I'm like, okay, I did this and this wrong, and it just keeps going, this and this and this and this and over there, and I could have done this, I could have done that. I'm like, okay, this is not helping. Like, I'm just hating myself. I'm just gonna keep playing.
Yeah.
The next game, I'm gonna play even faster, so these mistakes don't happen. Because if there's so many mistakes, you can't be conscious of all of them. So my
Yeah.
approach is just to make to play fast enough or well enough that they don't even happen again.
Okay. So how do you practice?
I like to concentrate a lot on my games.
Okay.
So I don't play like an absurd amount of games, but the games that I play, I put full concentration behind them so that I'm like actively aware of what I'm doing, what I'm seeing, and
Mhm.
what's the guy doing. Yeah.
Um, okay. So do you get any advice from outside? I mean, living in the team house, is Cats giving you advice?
Over here, not really.
Hmm.
In general, I don't get much advice. I'd say I'm a pretty I'm not sure how to describe it. I'm a self-learner.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
but I can always message like other players and ask them for advice, and they always help me. So that's super cool. I like having this getting advice from other players more than having them watch my games and like give me like criticism and stuff.
Okay. Do you feel that that could be or no? Let me rephrase that. Um, if you describe it like that, doesn't it also have disadvantages? Training like that? I mean, you isn't it like you don't get always your own mistakes? I mean, sometimes you're not aware of them, so you need somehow input from outside. So
Yeah, of course. You always need at least some criticism in your games at some point because
yeah.
you can't find your own mistakes all the time.
Hmm.
Um, but I feel like as long as you have a few people who are close to you and like they're actively watching your games, they're gonna give it to you anyway. So
Hmm. Hmm.
that's always nice, and I'm always willing to accept them.
Yeah.
And but everyone has different practice patterns, right? Like everyone has their own way that their practice makes it work. So I think you should always just do what you feel best about. So
Yeah.
I feel like for me, the way I'm doing right now this year, I feel like it's probably the best way.
The results talk to them for themselves, obviously. Yeah, for sure. We will take a short break here, and then we will be back in a second.